Make me a channel of your praise. Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. Where there is injury, your pardon, Lord. And where they start true faith in you.
Hi, I'm Carolina Castorena, and this is Visions of Inspiration. Welcome to the show. We've got someone here that can tell you about your dreams. But actually, she wants you to, be able to share about what you think your dreams are about, and then she can help you along with that. So I'd like to introduce Magorie Miles.
Miles.
It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to be here,
How are
Carolina.
you?
I am fantastic.
Good.
Thank you.
Well, Miles is my grandson's name. Yeah, I've never heard that name until they named him Miles.
Well, isn't that a coincidence?
Coincidence. Now, do I believe in coincidence? No.
Me neither. No accidents.
Now, tell me a little bit about yourself. I mean, you got a lot of degrees behind you. I mean, you've taught you're a professor. I mean, can you describe some of the things that you've done in your
my other lives?
In your young life?
Other lives. Well, I was originally, in one of my career transitions, I was a psychotherapist, transitioned into a college professor, and now I am working as a hypnotherapist and dream coach. So I am very passionate about teaching people more about how to use their unconscious mind.
Ah, why that?
I've always been fascinated with the unconscious, and I think originally starting out as a psychotherapist, I worked with crisis intervention, and I really felt that when we know more, we do better. And so it's really more about educating, and really, and education comes from educare, to bring forth. And I believe that we all have special gifts to bring forth. And one of the easiest ways to bring forth our gifts is through our dreaming mind. And so I have focused not only on sleep dreams, but even daydreams and guided dream meditations.
What does guided dream meditation mean?
Well, it is really a form of helping the mind to focus and using just wonderful suggestive imagery and imagination. And one of the easiest ways that we get to the gifts of the unconscious is through our imagination.
Wow. Okay, so you started doing all of this, and the more you did it, the more excited you got about it, the more into you got about it, the more you helped other people. When you're helping other people, working through their dreams and showing them how to do it, or how they need to do it, how does that make you feel?
It is so exciting because as I started teaching dreams when I was a college professor, and I was so excited about the chapter that was on states of consciousness, meditation and altered states of consciousness and hypnosis and dreaming. And I needed to develop a particular assignment for the students that involved a writing assignment. That was part of the curriculum. And I decided that I wanted to teach my students how to discover the messages and the guidance and the wisdom that were in their own dreams.
Wow.
And I was teaching at a technological college, excuse me, and it was so amazing that these engineering students, these computer students, were sharing some of the most powerful and wonderful and spiritual dreams. And there's so many levels of dreams and dreaming. And one student in particular shared a dream that was so powerful, using some of the easy techniques, and it gave him such an important message. And that was so touching to me, what he discovered. Because our dreams are really about informing our waking lives. They tell us so much about what we really feel about things that are going on in our life, where we've been,
Right.
where we're going, and the easiest way to get there. So it's not just about understanding our dreams, but it's about taking an action step to honor the dream's message in our waking life.
And what are the action steps?
It depends on what the dream is helping us to understand about our growth, our health, our wholeness, that the message that comes through that, the dream. So we would, for example, this particular student, same thing, a little tickle. This particular student there's another student I think I'd like to share with that would make that point a little bit easier. In her dream, she dreamt about being in the ocean.
Oh,
and she was having this delightful time with all these wonderful sea creatures, and she was swimming about, and all of a sudden, the sea turned into this fiery place, and a big hand grabbed her out of the water.
That's scary.
And it's scary. So one of the things, too, I would just like to assure everybody who's watching or listening that nightmares or the scary dreams are some of our most important messages.
Really? Why?
The dreaming mind, so I'll just take a little aside here. The dreaming mind, we're dreaming 4 to 6 dreams a night.
Oh.
But we're not necessarily remembering all of them. And so when there's a particularly important message, our dreaming mind is really insistent upon coming through and giving us this guidance, giving us this message. So if we're not paying attention, or we're just kind of, tune down our dreams a little bit, the nightmare will come through because it's such an important message. The dream mind says, well, if you're not paying attention, why don't I scare you? And if I scare you, you will get the message, or you will get the information from the dream. But we have to know a little bit more about how to work with the dream in order to get that message. So I just wanted to tell you about the message from that particular dream, and then how to take what the action step was that she took. So it turned out, as she was exploring her dream, and one of the ways to explore a dream is with your personal associations to the images in the dream, because they mean different things. They're always in the context of the dreamer's life. So she began to explore, what did being in the sea and the ocean mean to her, and playing with those sea creatures. Well, it brought up a long-forgotten life dream that she had about being a marine biologist.
Oh, my goodness.
That she had always had this passion for these creatures, the sea creatures, and wanting that more than anything. And she said, and doing anything else would have felt like hell, the fires that were symbolically represented in the dream.
Interesting.
So she realized that she had been on that course of wanting to be a marine biologist, but was persuaded by parents and other people in her life and said, well, what are you going to do with that? That's not, you need to do something much more practical that you can make a good living at. And she abandoned the dream. And so this dream came back to remind her of that life passion that she had. And so one of the actions that she decided to do as a result of having this dream was, she said, when I finish my degree in this other profession, which she had decided she was going to do, she said, I'm going to get my scuba diving license, and avocationally I'm going to begin pursuing and staying with this love. So the dream informed her of that passion that she had just been putting down and putting out of her consciousness. It came bubbling through, and then with that one action, she was felt so full of being able to bring that life dream back.
And that's how important they are.
They're extremely important. Let me give you a couple of other examples of how important they are.
Okay.
I've gotten
now
really
you're rolling, girl.
I'm rolling. Because I wrote a book called Dream Doors, Unlocking the Genius of Your Dreaming Mind. Because we are all geniuses.
Hey, I didn't get that book from you. Yes, send that one to me.
I will. Okay. And we are all artists of the everyday. And so it's really, we have so many gifts to bring forward. So a couple of examples of people that we're pretty familiar with that did work with their dreams or got information and their genius came through was, for example, Mary Shelley. At the age of 19, through a nightmare, she wrote Frankenstein. That entire dream came through.
Oh my goodness.
Then there was Elias Howe. And back to the nightmare for a moment. Elias Howe, who was the inventor of the sewing machine,
Wow.
was having a problem with the sewing machine because he was saying, he just couldn't figure out how this contraption was going to work. Then he had this nightmare where he was surrounded by these natives that were going to kill him, and they had huge spears, and at the end of the spear, as he recalled upon awakening, just as they were about to kill him, he woke up and he remembered the spear, and it had a hole at the end of the spear. And he realized that's what he needed. The hole had to be at the bottom of the needle for the sewing machine to work.
Oh my goodness.
So there's another thing, too, that I'd like to tell you about Salvador Dali, the great artist. Many of his dreams informed his artwork, his sleep dreams. But I want to bring us back to intentional daydreaming or intentional working with bringing that dreaming mind into waking life for the inner genius to come forward. He had a technique, and this is something everybody can do. He had a technique where he used a very heavy key, and he held it in his hand, and he had a china plate, and he would turn it upside down next to him. And as he would have his canvas, and he would have his art materials next to him, ready to paint. So he'd be completely prepared. He'd have his canvas, his art materials ready. He'd be sitting in a chair having this heavy key in his hand. The china plate would be overturned. And he would allow himself to get to a very relaxed state of mind. So as it became more and more relaxed, so it's very important that we allow the stillness, the relaxation to come to us. And again, I learned that also through being a hypnotherapist, how important it is to just open the mind and let the genius out.
Wow.
So he would sit there and he would hold that key, and as he held the key and became more and more relaxed, and finally he would let the key drop. He would become so relaxed. When the key hit the plate, he would open his eyes, and the images that were dancing before his eyes at that moment, he would start to paint.
Oh my goodness.
So we can do these kinds of little things that just open us up to our own gifts and our own genius.
Wow. Well, I've got some questions from our guests asking, why do we dream?
Why do we dream? Well, first of all, dreaming is very important for our health. That neurologically, our brain gets a different chemical bath during sleep consciousness. So it's very important health-wise. But it's also important mentally health-wise, if that's such a word, mentally health-wise, because it's really a time when we are, when they look at screens of the brain, they find that the emotional centers of the brain, the limbic centers, are very, very active at that time.
Wow, that is interesting.
So dreams are telling us how we really feel, as I mentioned, about things. So that's one of the reasons. We're also receiving guidance, universal guidance, wisdom through our dreaming consciousness. It's another way to really have our unconscious mind be able to come through and give us these wonderful, wonderful gifts of problem solving, creativity, teaching us about imbalances in our life. I could go on, but I know that there's more questions.
Yeah. So what happens? What happens that we wake up and we forget our dream? Why does that happen?
Well, that's very common because the dream actually it comes to us in sensory memory, which is a very fleeting memory. So in order to capture the dream, we have to have an intention to remember.
Okay.
And it's almost like a radio dial that we can turn up or turn down.
Okay.
So many times, because maybe we've had frightening dreams or we just don't want to pay attention, we've been told in our lives, now stop daydreaming, stop dreaming, as though that were something wrong instead of embracing it into our wholeness. So it's important to capture the dream, and the best way to do that is keeping a dream journal. And I'd love to.
I was wondering when you were going to come
get
up
to
with
the
that
dream
one.
journal. So let me give you some, and your viewers, a couple of quick hints about really keeping a dream journal that's going to help them to remember their dreams and to get some good information at the same time. So having an intention before you fall asleep at night that you're going to remember the dream, and you can do that very easily too, even writing in your dream journal, I easily and effortlessly remember my dreams upon awakening. In fact, you might even want to say my most significant one, because you might.
That.
I easily and effortlessly remember my dreams upon awakening.
Good.
So now we just fall asleep and just whatever comes to mind, we want to lie still in the morning and just because it's on the edges of consciousness. As soon as we start to do something else, we're going to delete that information because we're getting new sensory data. So having our dream journal right next to the bed. But let me give you a couple of things about the dream journal. Before you write down your very first dream in your little notebook, leave a couple of pages right at the very beginning and label it Table of Contents.
Oh.
Put the date and a title for each of your dreams.
Wow.
It's a very good way to see patterns that start to exist, or a dream as you go through them. You just review your table of contents. You can begin to see certain patterns emerging, or if there's a dream that perhaps you've forgotten, but something in waking life triggers that, you know how to find it very, very quickly.
Wow.
So it's a great way to, and I want to get back to that in a moment. So we're going to write down our titles,
Okay.
a table of contents. We want to write the dream as we're remembering it in present tense, as though it is happening in this moment, happening now. We don't want to talk about it. That disassociates us from our consciousness in the dream. We want to re-enter the dream itself.
Oh.
So
Okay.
there is a difference between saying, I saw a bird, or I see a bird. And I see a bird, and it's sitting in a tree on a nest. Now, I've gotten a lot of information about that. And even just something that small, I could give that a title and say, Sitting on a Nest Egg. Who knew? Who knew? Now, that dream is telling us something, isn't it? Just from that title.
Good.
But if I just say, I saw a bird, what would we get out of that? So we have no detail. So we want to get into the detail, and then how did you feel when you saw that bird? So oftentimes, writing down our feelings are very, very important. So we write down the dream in present tense, and then it's so wonderful just to draw something very, very quickly from the dream. And we don't have to be Picasso or that Salvador Dali I talked about. It's really about, because the dream came to us in an image or pictures, it comes from the right brain, that side of consciousness and that side of the brain that thinks in images. So if we just drew something, those images itself could speak to us. And we could even have a conversation. So another way to work with our dream is to have a conversation with the image. Or it could be just a feeling that we want. Let's say we woke up and we were feeling like this, and we took out our little pen and went like that. And we looked at that. That's going to tell us something just about the energetics of what we're feeling. So we've written down the dream in present tense. We've drawn something from that dream. And again, very quickly, we always want to do it quickly without censoring. And then so we've written it down, we've given it a title in present tense, I'm going to re-emphasize that, done a drawing, and then it's also good to put a notes section. A little note to yourself, 1 or 2 words or a sentence or so, what happened the night before you had the dream.
Well, that's interesting. Okay.
And it isn't about eating that chili dog. It's really about what happened. And so what we want to start doing is connecting the dots, putting things together about what just happened in the dream and what's similar in the dream that is going on in waking life. And then the best way that we can honor the dream then is to look in waking life for validation, for things that occur or that we see that are synchronicities. So for example, I had a dream one time and there was a particular plant that was in this dream. But this dream was actually not even a sleep dream. It was a dream that, again, I just decided to relax and ask for information. And it's really just using our dreaming mind. I was making a decision about my office and whether or not I needed to leave that particular space that I dearly loved, or was it time to move on? There was certain things conspiring for that moving on, but I was just so emotionally attached to this office. So I sat in the office and I just asked my dreaming mind to either give me an image or give me some information. So we can do that in our waking, daydreaming life.
That's interesting.
And I got an image, and I got an image of a particular plant. And as I wrote about the plant and actually dialogued with this plant, so I drew it just real quickly, but made some little, picture of it. And then I started a dialogue with the plant. And the plant spoke to me because, again, it's all about imagination. So as we enter the imagination, we're entering into the unconscious. That unconscious is part of the dreaming mind.
Very
so
interesting.
I asked the plant some questions, and the plant answered back because we just pretend. So this is a great way to work with your dreams, and is to actually dialogue with one of your images. I could dialogue back to the other dream. I could have dialogued with the bird in the nest egg dream. But now I'm looking at this image of this plant, and the plant speaks to me in my... So what I do is I pretend if I were the plant, what would I have to say? What is that I want to tell Marjorie? So the plant actually told me that it was root bound, that it needed a bigger pot to grow, and that there were many capillaries, there were many ways to enrich the soil. And I had asked specifically, and this is, dreams can answer questions for us. So I asked specifically about the question. So I held an intention about the question that I wanted I wanted some help. And that's what dreams do for us. They help us with our challenges, with our problems, with growth in general. And the plant and the dream image told me that I was root bound in this office because I was asking about the office specifically.
That's interesting.
So back to the validation. So I thought, I'm getting a very clear message that this space is, I'm keeping root bound. I need to grow. I need a bigger pot. Things need to change. I need to be open for that change.
Wow.
And as I left my office, I headed around the corner to go to the ladies' room, and I saw this very plant.
Oh my goodness.
And I had never seen this plant before.
Wow.
So this is the synchronicity, the validation. And one of the other things that I asked about this plant, from the plant, I said, how can I validate this also and honor this message? And it was, perhaps get a plant and bring it into your home office that replicates this plant. And I went and I bought that plant, and I had a living.
Goodness.
So we continually interact consciously, unconsciously, so that we're getting more and more information all the time.
Wow, I've got another question.
I noticed.
Really,
Your audience
really
is
asking
excited.
questions
Yes.
here. Why do we have the same dreams over and over again?
Great question. What a great audience.
They keep popping up with
They
these
keep
questions
popping up.
here.
Why do we have the same dream over and over again? Because we haven't gotten the message yet. So
That's right.
our recurring dreams, are coming back to tell us that we haven't gotten the message yet. And yet, if we look in waking life, when that dream started, what's similar now that you had this dream right now that's similar to that particular time? There's a theme, there's something that needs to be resolved, needs to be re-examined, needs to be explored, and it's triggering that very issue again until we find that message.
There's one more question. It's got to be like almost done. We got 3 minutes left.
Oh, it does go fast.
Isn't it? I
Yes,
told you.
You did.
You know, a long time ago, my grandmother died, and I dreamt that I reached out to look at her, and she grabbed hold of my hand, and she would not let go, and they're carrying her away, and she wouldn't let go of my hand. And this is a dream I've had a long time ago. So, you know, one of the questions is, you know, what does that mean, dead people, you know, dreaming like that? Do you have any idea?
Well, there are different types of dreams and different levels of dreaming. And there are times where we actually have what's called a visitation dream. And at that time, usually that comes shortly after someone has made their transition, and they're coming back to give us a message or to reassure us.
Well, she scared the heck out of me.
Yeah. Maybe at this point she wasn't feeling like she wanted to let go, and she needed to. And so the message might have been also for her as well. But we do have, and these seem very real, very, you know, less from the more than the ordinary dream.
Right.
So many people usually are comforted in those dreams by the visitation. So again, it would need something, and I would explore more with you in a a session.
It scared
about
me
that.
enough to
Yeah.
where when anybody, when anybody would die, I couldn't touch them. I would just like, you know, look, but I would not get near the coffin, and I wouldn't touch him. Even when my dad just passed away not too long ago, I couldn't touch him. You know, that dream just
So what
stayed
would it
in my
mean
life.
to you if you were to touch a dead person? See, that's the question, and you don't have to answer that, but that would be that would be the question, because dreams often ask us to ask questions of ourselves, so that we can deal with fears, we can deal with our perceived limitations in some ways, or we are being asked to grow ourselves in new ways. So there's always a message, and again, even though the visitation dreams are a different type of dreaming, they always can be looked at through the lens of a normal dream, because it has other messages, other layers.
Oh, Marjorie, thank you so much. You gave a lot of information.
Good,
It's been
that's
a pleasure.
really been my intention.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
This is Carolina, Visions of Inspiration. God bless our troops, and God bless all of you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Wow.
There is hatred, let me bring your love. There is injury, your pardon, Lord. And where they start